Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Zobs, and in today's video we are going to be looking at how to draft a princess dart with cup or a princess dart bustier the easiest way possible. Now, a lot of people have been chatting me up from the WhatsApp group with regards to this, so I decided to do this today to help some of us that are still finding it hard to draft a well-seated princess that's bustier. Okay, so I've drawn out the basic lines. The shoulder measurement is 16 inches divided by 2. You have 8 inches. Then I added half an inch for the sleeve allowance. That is if you're adding the sleeve. Now from the shoulder to the armhole point, I have 9 inches. And to get your shoulder to armhole point, you are going to divide your bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now what I had was 7.8, which is approximately 8 inches. So remember, you're going to be taking out 1 inch for your shoulder slope. So plus 1 inch gives you 9. That is why I have shoulder to armhole point as 9. Then from shoulder to the bust point, I have 10.5 inches. Shoulder to the underbust is 13.5 inches. Then the half length is 17 inches. I added extra 1 inch for seam allowance. You can add 1.5 inches or you can add 2 inches. Your sewing allowance totally depends on you. Okay, so the neckline we are going to mark out is just going to be 3 by 3 for now, except maybe you want a different kind of neckline, you can alter it later. But for the purpose of this drafting, we are using 3 by 3 just to give our pattern paper a defined shape. Okay, so at the armhole point, at the armhole line, you are going to come down by 1 inch, which is the shoulder slope, remembering that your shoulder is not that straight. There's always that 1 inch slant, okay, so that your shoulder after joining can rest properly. Okay, so the next point we are going to be marking, or the next line we are going to be marking, is to divide the remaining part of the armhole, which is 8 inches now, by 2. So you mark the midpoint and that gives you 4 inches. So from where your 4 inches point is, you come in by half an inch, and then with your straight ruler, you connect from the shoulder slope to the half an inch mark, and then with your curved ruler, usually once I get to this point, I bring out the armhole curve, or I just mark out 1 inch from that angle so that my curve can sit in properly. So connect your lines, and the armhole, front armhole, is sorted. Okay, so the next point we are going to be looking at now is the bust span measurement. The bust span measurement is where your dart sits. The bust span is 7 inches. Divided by 2, you have 3.5 inches. Then you add half an inch seam allowance, okay? And that goes only to the bust point. The bust point is the only part you are going to measure or mark 4 inches. Then the under bust, I'll be using the exact bust span measurement, which is 3.5. Same thing goes for the half length, and same thing goes for the seam allowance. What I mean is, measure 4 inches at the bust point, then 3.5 inches at the under bust to the half length, and then connect your lines. So at this point, we are going to connect the armhole line to the bust point. Use your straight ruler and connect like so. Now to do our underbust tightening, that is to contour the underbust, we are going to mark out after the bust point 2 inches. 2 inches. If you want it to be more curved, you can go by 2.5, but I use 2 inches most of the times and it comes out nice. So 2 inches from the half length up to the underbust. Then at the bust point, I don't want the bust curve to be too pointed, so I had to come down by half an inch from the bust point, and also half an inch above the bust point. Okay, just to give it a very nice curve by the time you are done curving. So at the armhole point, I'm going to be opening the armhole by 1 inch on both sides. Yes, 1 inch on both sides. You take 1 inch up and 1 inch down. That is before and after the first armhole line we marked. So you connect the 1 inch at the top to the 1/2 inch above the bust point, and do same to the 1 inch below. Now you are having 3 lines at the armhole. The middle part of your armhole is going to be going off. So with the curved part of your curved ruler or armhole curve, you blend out the shape at that point. So now I'll go ahead and shade the parts that are going to be going off. But before then, remember that by the time you are done joining your darts, it's going to be shortened. So always remember to replace the 2 inches you've reduced the armhole line with. Replace it back. So here you have your 2 inches. Please, you can go ahead and extend the line. I usually make it up to 2.5, then I trim out the excess in the end. Okay, so the third line from the shoulder is what you are extending. You extend and curve it back into your armhole, and now this is your new armhole. So this part that is being shaded is going to be taken out entirely. Okay, that is your dart. But the allowance that is being taken out, we are going to equally add it back to the pattern, or you add it when you are transferring to your fabric. Now you can go ahead and add your basic body measurements. The bust measurement is 38 divided by 4. And that gives you 9.5 inches. Okay, so you measure out the dart allowance you have there, the shaded part, which is 2 inches. You add it after your 9.5, and that should be 11.5 from your center of fold. Then you add your extra sewing allowance, 2 inches, 3 inches. That totally depends on you. Okay, so just go ahead and mark this all out and move straight to the underbust measurement. Now the underbust measurement is 32 inches, and 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. Now you mark your 8 inches, also add up your 2 inches dart allowance, and then your 2 inches sewing allowance. Okay, so you repeat the same thing for the waist, which is 33 inches divided by 4, 8.25 plus 2 inches for the dart allowance, and then 2 inches for the sewing allowance. So you go ahead and connect all your lines together. So the SS here, or the SA here, is the sewing allowance. Now you can go ahead and cut out the pattern, cutting out from your neck to your shoulder. Then you cut out the shaded parts only. That is to separate the center piece and the side piece. Okay, so remember you have 2 armholes, and that is the first and the second one. Just make sure that you are not cutting on the first armhole. You are cutting on the one that is outside your armhole line. Okay, so you go ahead and continue with your cutting. Now our pattern is ready, so go ahead and make your notches so that when you transfer to your fabric, you equally transfer the notches, and that would help you when you want to join. You match up the lines and just sew so that you do not miss the points. Okay, this is very, very, very important. So keep this aside and then move straight into drafting of the back piece. Okay, do not forget the CF part is to be placed on fold when you are cutting on your fabric. So now we'll quickly move on to the back piece. You can see I've already drafted out my lines. This is the bust point, the under bust, the half length, and then the sewing allowance. Okay, so the zip allowance is already drafted as well, or marked as well, and I am using 1.5 inches for the zip allowance. So the neckline you are going to use, make sure that the width of your back neckline matches the width of your front neckline. So the back neckline width and the front neckline width has to be the same thing. So I'll go ahead and connect the depth to the width of the neckline. Then you mark your shoulder slope, connect your neck width to the shoulder slope. Okay, so the front armhole, we had to divide the armhole and then we got the armhole curve for the front, but for the back it is not necessary. Okay, but before we move on to the armhole, you are going to place the bust span measurement. Here you are using the exact bust span measurement plus sewing allowance, which is 4, unlike the front where we did 4 at the bust point and 3.5 at the under bust to the waist. So at the waistline, you open your darts by 1/2 inch on both sides and then connect that to the bust point. Now this has given you your waist dart, okay? But if you still want to make the back your princess dart, it is still possible. Okay, so usually or normally I come out by 1 inch from the angle there and then make my curve. But here we are not going in by 1/2 inch. You're just connecting straight to the armhole line, like I said earlier. So this is my armhole curve. Just let's assume that you equally want to make the back princess dart also. You can still go ahead and do that. Now, before we move to the armhole, you can go ahead now and contour the zip part. Now, to reduce that bulge at the back of your dresses, I usually reduce the zip allowance at the waistline from the center of fold by 1/2 inch. Okay, so from the CF or the central back, I come in by 1/2 inch and then connect that straight to the neck depth, and that shaded part at the center back is going to be going off. All right, so you can go ahead now and impute your body measurements, and just the same way you did with the front, you divide your bust by 4, you add your dart allowance. Here now the dart allowance is 1 inch. You add your 1 inch dart allowance and your 2 inches sewing allowance to match up with the front. Okay, you do the same thing with the underbust. Your underbust divided by 4 plus your 1 inch for the dart allowance and then 2 inches for the sewing allowance. Same thing goes to the waist, which you are now marking at the seam allowance part. Okay, so if we had added bust dart to the front piece, the front should have been longer than the back, but here we did not add bust dart, so that is why the front and the back piece are still having the same 18 inches from shoulder to half length. Okay, so go ahead and join your lines and your back piece is ready. So just in case you want the back piece to equally have princess dart, you can go ahead and divide the armhole from the slope to the armhole point by 2. Okay, so what we have here is 8 inches. You divide by 2, mark the midpoint and connect that line to the bust point. Here you are not going to do any form of contouring. Okay, just make sure that you blend out that bust point tip, the tip or that pointed part at the bust point. Now you can go ahead and extend the line by 1 inch because you'll be needing 1/2 inch to join that back. So you extend it by 1 inch and retrace the armhole, same thing you did for the front. If you don't do this, by the time you are done joining, you will see that you are running short on the armhole area. Okay, so friends, we have come to the end of the tutorial. If you're yet to subscribe to this channel, kindly do so, and do turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we drop a new video. Okay, thank you all so much for stopping by. See you in our next video. If you're interested in joining our free WhatsApp group, I'll be leaving the link in the description box so that you can join this challenge, or this question actually came from there. So I decided to post it here for anyone that is still having problems drafting their princess dart with cup or princess dart bustier. Okay friends, take care of yourself until we meet again. Bye.